Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily with Kyle Elfrink and Ray Flowers, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to use the promo code FSD20 for a 20% discount on the products over at fantasyguru.com.
It is that time again, more specifically 11 a.m. Eastern time for Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com. A pleasure to have all of you on board. Kyle Elfrink on this side, Ray Flowers on that side. Today is a momentous day, January 25th, 2024, a day we're in the city of Los Angeles. It's not the Dodgers, it's not LeBron, it's not the Lakers. Hell, it's not even the Rams that are leading the sports pages. Ray, we never get to say this, but the Chargers are the big news in town in Los Angeles.
Well, I guess they deserve it. It's a port in the storm, as they say, right? It's an opportunity for the Chargers to hopefully rise above the concerns and the issues they have dealt with recently. They've dealt with issues with the draft class, with the team, obviously with the coaching, losing all those close games. They think they might have solved that issue, I guess, Kyle.
Jim Harbaugh making the move from Michigan to LA. We will discuss here on FSD. What else do we got for you? Football and baseball. That's what we've got for you. You see the Bolts snagging Harbaugh. We'll do a championship playoff weekend check-in. About the only news now is who's going to be in, who's going to be out. So we'll get you rundowns on critical guys like Deebo Samuel, Mark Andrews, even Isaiah Pacheco dealing with a bit of an issue. The guy on top of me over here on the images, Ray Flowers, is a stud in his one-and-done league. Ray is coming off of a massive weekend, but can he do it again this weekend? We'll give you some early thoughts on the one-and-done leagues that we've been talking about throughout the playoffs. We will continue our discussion of wide receivers this week. We will talk about the names that are headed into free agency, and there are some big ones. Now, remember, there are franchise tags that can be thrown, but some big decisions to be made, and maybe not as deep as the running back class, but certainly some guys at the top that could find some new homes in 2024 and beyond. Then we will sneak back into baseball. Obviously, we've been telling you about the 2024 Fantasy Baseball Draft Guide that Ray Flowers and the crew has put together. More coming your way on that, including today, where we will talk about the waste of time, I don't know, we'll let Ray tell us, of overall rankings, which people pretty well print in every single magazine, and they're all over the internet, but Ray hates them. We'll tell you why coming up. And we'll continue our breakdown of all things catchers, something that is unique to this catcher position, two catcher leagues. Which I don't even know, Ray. What do you think the percentage is of two catcher leagues anymore? You love polls. Have you run one lately?
That's a great question that I didn't look into before the show started. I haven't run one this year. Let's quickly look. I would say, if I had to guess, I'd say probably less than 50%, just off the top of my head, because it's a third of leagues. It sounds like everyone kind of went away from that and just said, go to hell. Here we go. I ran a poll last year. Let's see what we got here. Oh, it's totally wrong on that, Kyle. I ran a poll last year in January, almost 23rd, almost a year ago exactly. That league had 0 catchers, 3% of leagues. So 3% of leagues just said, forget catchers. 2 catchers was 21%. 1 catcher was 76.
Wow. I'm old school, Ray. I'm in 2 catcher leagues everywhere pretty well. That's kind of what I've
pretty much everyone I'm in is a 2-catcher league too.
Yeah. This year, though, you might want to be in a 2-catcher league. We'll discuss, but for the first time in a while, we're getting some depth at this position. It's kind of becoming like the tight end in the NFL. Starting to get some young guys who can actually do something besides call a game. They can actually win a game with their bat. So we'll break it down, kind of strategies and maybe the depth at the position as we get ready for 2024. As always, Ray Flowers, now is your 1 minute to tell us why we all need to jump on board with the Fantasy Guru Baseball Draft Guide.
Because it's the best thing ever. Boom!
Well, 2 seconds. Excellent.
Yeah. Hey, let's go, Kyle. No, I mean, I think we do things a little differently at fantasyguru.com, which I'm proud of. We do it in football, and I think we try to do it in baseball too. And, you can find, as Kyle mentioned earlier this week, you can find, and they're coming out, the sleepers and busts and the targets and avoid stuff, the stuff you're used to. But we also try to do a little bit of a different angle on things. And right now we're doing a lot of reviewing. And what I like to do in the reviewing is not just say who hit these home runs or stole these bases or won these games last year. It's to look at the skills below that. And a lot of times we're looking at the skills below that and we're comboing the skills up. It's great to know who strikes guys out, but who also avoids the walk. it's great to know who strikes guys out and avoids a walk, but who also gets grounders, right? So we try to put things together and start creating categories or buckets, if you will, of players to target, right? Because a lot of people say, well, Ray, I have got the rankings, but let's drill a little bit deeper. That's a lot of what we're doing right now. As we move forward here, we're going to get a lot more rankings updates, and we'll start to move into player profiles, which I know Kyle likes. And back in the day, I got a couple of awards on the shelf for that back in the day, but basically, 1,200, 1,500 words on single players, so a lot more deep diving. All of that from the preseason's included. If you move through the season, it's all included as well. So it's called the Draft Guide, but it's the entire 2024 Major League Baseball season that we cover. Use that promo code FSD20 to get you a discount on that. And as well, you get Discord access, so you can ask questions. We can go back and forth. Any kind of podcasts or anything else we do there, you get as well. And then, of course, you have access to this show, whether or not you choose to subscribe to the baseball.
I told you a minute, Ray.
I know.
Not a minute 40. I was about ready to start the Oscar music running in the background to tell you to. No, I kid.
I tried to do it in 3 seconds, and you gave me crap, so I
No.
figured
I'm joking. People like to know more. They like to hear from Ray Flowers. Usually I'm the one eating up the time. We'll get to baseball in a bit. Let's start with football. Ray, let's start in L.A. Jim Harbaugh, now the second Harbaugh to be in the NFL. Again, obviously you saw him in San Francisco. He was successful in San Francisco. I guess there was a little bit of disagreement between him and Trent Baalke. Was he the GM? I guess they didn't really see eye to eye, and so it was kind of a natural parting of ways. So they moved on. San Francisco's obviously done well. Jim Harbaugh's obviously done well. It's been about a decade since he's been in the NFL. And for our purposes, Ray, it's the fantasy impact. And the difficulty here is this Chargers team and Chargers franchise is in a real flux because they're probably moving on from Austin Eckler. They're probably moving on from a guy like Mike Williams. You're going to bring in a totally new coaching staff. It's really difficult outside of saying, wow, Justin Herbert, it's good to see maybe he'll have some stability with the offense and, a more proven head coach, so on and so forth. But until we see what the Chargers are going to do this offseason in the backfield, out wide, it's kind of tough to make any grand proclamations about these guys.
It is. I think that more than anything, the Chargers feel good now about they think they have a direction, right? And they think they have someone that can lead the ship in that direction. I thought you were going to mention Keenan Allen, too. We've talked about him previously. It's uncertain. Are they going to pay him? He's an aging player.
More crazy high. Yeah.
So, this is a team in flux. But if you're a head coach, I've said this many times, San Diego's beautiful. Like, it's a great place to be. You've got Justin Herbert, and despite the ups and downs in the fantasy space, I think that he's clearly a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. He could be better than that. That's very attractive to a head coach because we all know it's extremely difficult to win consistently without a quarterback in the NFL these days. So there are pieces here, but to your point, there's front office upheaval. There, the general manager, that situation. The whole thing is in a scenario where I don't think Harbaugh comes in and it gets worse. I don't know how much better it gets in year one, but at least they've got a new direction.
Ray, Mike McCoy, Anthony Lynn, and Brandon Staley. Those were the three previous coaches who all shared at least, well, I guess they shared a variety of attributes. They all got fired. That's how it usually works. But also all three of those guys, McCoy, Lynn, and Staley, had never been a head coach before taking the job with the Chargers, whether in San Diego or Los Angeles. So this is the first hire since Norv Turner in 2007. It's the first time the Chargers have hired a coach who's been a head coach. And this franchise, Ray, they've kind of been they're not bad.
Yeah.
They're always middle of the pack, it seems.
Yeah.
In some years you think they're going to make a boost, and they've made some AFC championships, and obviously there was the Super Bowl when they just got mauled by San Francisco a number of years ago. But overall, it's just kind of been a franchise that has never really had a history. They have a history, but now, Ray, you're leaving San Diego. You're going to L.A. You're playing in what many consider to be the Rams' home stadium. It's still a team and a franchise searching for an identity, and I don't complain at all about this hire. Jim Harbaugh is kind of tough to love. Mm-hmm. He's not a guy that I'd really anticipate enjoying a hangout session with, but I don't fault the Chargers at all for making this move and at least doing something proactive and spending some money to actually provide a little legitimacy for their franchise.
Yeah, because Staley, should he have gotten the job or not? I mean, he got the job, and he sat there on the sidelines looking like this, and they lost every game by 3 points. I mean, that's what happened for years now, right? So they bring Harbaugh in. If they're losing games, Harbaugh's face is going to be red, and he's going to be yelling and screaming. Like he totally different personality. Obviously, success in the NFL, success in college. That'll bring respect in the players in the locker room, right? Because of that experience there. And we'll see. And, I always struggle with football in particular because there are multiple kinds of coaches. There's the Dan Campbell coaches, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's Bill Belichick, who's just quiet looking at it. You can succeed in different ways, right? But personality-wise, Staley to Harbaugh is a pretty significant change, and I think it's what the Chargers needed.
We'll see how it goes. Harbaugh off the market. There was a report today. Adam Schefter said that Bill Belichick may remain on the market all off season. He may not have a landing spot. Mike Vrabel said to be interviewing with Carolina. I think he's also talked with Atlanta. So still some chips to fall, but we'll see on Belichick. Everybody seemed to be hot to trot to put him with Atlanta. For whatever reason, the Falcons haven't pulled that trigger. And at this point, you kind of think, maybe they're not going to pull the trigger if they haven't already. So we'll see with Bill Belichick, but still some determinations to be made. Obviously, we're still trying to determine the Super Bowl matchup. Coming up this week, Sunday, we got Kansas City at Baltimore. We have Detroit at San Francisco. Quick check on the latest spreads. Baltimore is favored by 3.5. Game total is 44.5. That is a 3 o'clock kickoff. Detroit, San Francisco, 49ers favored by a full 7 points there. And the game total is 51. That is a 6:30 kickoff on Sunday night. And Ray, there are some injuries here. Deebo Samuel, gosh, is it 50-50? He didn't practice yesterday. Mm-hmm. We got the proverbial, he's feeling better. Okay, but we really don't know with this injury. We know it's not a fracture, but that doesn't mean he's able to play this weekend.
Absolutely not. And it's distressing that this is a continual thing with him. And we've talked about it. Everyone has. He plays hard. He doesn't avoid contact, all that kind of stuff. But he's got to be in the lineup. And, the Niners, we saw this against the Packers when they lose Deebo. The offense changes completely. He's a dynamic player. Even if he's not going for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, just having him on the field is such a weapon. Mm-hmm. The Niners really need him, right? And we saw Brock Purdy struggle a little bit without that weapon. And we'll see. But it does appear right now that I think 50-50, my sense is that's kind of a best case scenario. As we sit here right now, I'm kind of thinking he's not playing, and that's disheartening for the Niners.
I have the option in one and done, which we'll talk about in a bit, of Deebo, Ayuk, and even Juwan Jennings. And Ray, if Deebo's out, I think Juwan Jennings, this is the week to play him, don't you? And it's no guarantee. I mean, right. When you get to this point in one and done, you're kind of throwing a few darts at positions where you're thin. And I'm not necessarily thin at wide receiver, but if Deebo's out, I think this is the time to use him because 2 weeks from now, he's probably available for the Super Bowl. So Jennings, even in DFS, I think would become a very popular play if Samuel is out.
Yeah, he had 5 catches for 61 yards, I think it was last week. And he's a good football player. He's not Deebo Samuel. He can't be utilized the same way. He doesn't bring the same skills. There's no upside to Juwan Jennings, but he's the next guy up. And he's, you see it all the time. He's on the field a lot. He's a good blocker. The team trusts him. He's been here for years. So, yeah, he's got an opportunity to catch, 4, 5, 6 passes if he's in the lineup and Deebo's out. And I agree with you. I think that right now you set your one-and-done lineup. It's hard not to go Brandon Ayuk. It'd be hard not to go Brandon Ayuk anyway, even if Deebo Samuel is back, because you're concerned about whether or not he's going to play a full complement of snaps if he plays. You're expecting the Niners to make the Super Bowl. But Juwan Jennings, not in my lineups right now, but I might make a pivot if indeed Deebo's ruled out.
Got some other issues beyond Deebo in San Francisco. Isaiah Pacheco had a DNP on a Wednesday, toe injury. He says he's going to be fine. We'll see. Doesn't look very good for the KCO line. Joe Thuney, I think it is, pec injury. He's more than likely out. We'll see. But Pacheco, Ray, I guess we'll plan on having him out there. He's been good. I mean, he's really been strong. We talked about it earlier in the week. That has given Kansas City, frankly, something they haven't had in previous years, where not only is he having a good season, but you kind of think, yeah, there's a future here. This is legitimate. They will give him the football 15 plus times a game. That's the guy he has become over the last 2 months with Kansas City.
Yeah. And all those people just remember back, 5 months ago, Jerick McKinnon. Well, we said it at the time, Jerick McKinnon's a gadget player. And you can certainly make the argument that the offense is no worse with Pacheco being so involved and McKinnon being out. I think you can make the argument that it's more balanced, as Kyle is saying. So it's actually better for the team. They're they're less distracted with trickery. Just give the ball to Pacheco and let him do his thing. Very good football player. You got to love watching him play. He plays with energy and passion, and his knees are up, and he's running into. I don't know how long his career is going to last, right? Because that's a tough style of football to run out with if you're not weighing 240 pounds. But I love watching him play, and he certainly has given them the boost on the ground that they need to augment a moderate passing attack that's successful, but not the same aerial attack we've seen in years past.
We have got a strong collection of tight ends set to play this week, as long as we get them all out there. Mark Andrews is a full participant in practice. Pretty good sign for him. Sam Laporta didn't practice yesterday. I kind of feel, Ray, and I could be wrong here, but I kind of feel it's why push him at this point? He's playing at probably 80%. They got the Zach Ertz edition. No word on if Ertz is going to play. I see that as an insurance policy, Ray. I still think Laporta's probably out there, even if he doesn't practice today or tomorrow. I still think the plan is to have him out there. It'll be dangerous to count on him because of the nature of this injury, but I think he will dress come Sunday night.
Yeah, if he doesn't dress, I'm going to have a real big issue, as will everyone else, with beat writers and such, because I didn't see an injury occur on the field, right? A tweak that he wasn't limping around. No one reported anything after the game. No one's reported anything since. So I'm fully anticipating, as you are, he's going to be out there. This is just the team, monitoring reps, because there's, at this point, studying the room and the film, you can get it done on the field without practicing.
What do you have, 9 catches last week?
9 for 65 yards, I think, yeah.
He's totally involved there. Okay, now we kind of look ahead to one and done. And Ray, as I noted, man, you and Justin, you and Fitsterman, weren't you guys 1 and 2 in last week?
Yeah, how crazy is that? Woo.
What worked for you? Any like long shots that came through for you last week?
My lineup wasn't even very good.
Second best in the whole league.
Yeah, I mean, Jared Goff was solid. I'm looking at my lineup right now. Jared Goff was solid. Jahmyr Gibbs was solid. Isaiah Pacheco was solid. Mike Evans had a big day.
Yeah.
Jaden Reed, 8 points. Rashee Rice, big disappointment, 9 points there. I could have had a huge game. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a good game. Travis Kelce had a couple of touchdowns. And then Chase McLaughlin and the Ravens. Yeah. So I think I'm assuming that, number one, I had a really good score last week relative to everyone else, because some people, the wins and losses didn't go the way they expected on their brackets. Yeah. I'm also expecting it this week. A lot of people are going to have a lot of big weapons to utilize. So, I don't know where I'm going to end up in this thing. Good week last week. Good positioning overall, but there's some concerns moving forward.
Yeah, mine was rough. Even my guys who did best were like average performances. Like I got 20.1 from Jared Goff, which is fine. But, in something like this, you're looking to hit the quarterback when he gets 30 points. So I came up short there with Goff, and I pulled the trigger on David Montgomery. He didn't do a thing in that game against Tampa. I had to go Dontavian Wicks. That was a big goose egg. So it was rough. And really, the first 2 weeks have been bad for me. I'm near the bottom. Ray is up near the top. I'm near the bottom, and we got probably, 50 teams or so sitting in this league. Now, I was looking at building my team for this week, Ray, and I don't know about you, but my running backs are terrible.
Well, I think
like I am running out of. I got nothing to really turn to. I do have McCaffrey, and I might use him this week just because I look at my lineup and it's so freaking bad. Unless I'd love to have McCaffrey, but I need points, man. And so I might have to just take the chance and not save McCaffrey for the Super Bowl and just go full throttle this week against Detroit.
Yeah, looking at this, I mean, I'm leaning toward playing Gus Edwards, because if the Ravens make it, I'll still have Justice Hill.
See, I'm going to play Hill and save Edwards.
See, that's kind of where we're at, right? Because I agree with you. I have McCaffrey too. And I sat there and I submitted a lineup, then I backed out and submitted it again. Like I'm in the same spot, because it's like, even if the Niners lose, if McCaffrey doesn't get hurt, I mean, what's a bad game? 18 points? Like and how many of these running backs left can you look at and say a good game is 18 points, right? So it's really tough not to play McCaffrey, even if that means you go to the Super Bowl and it's Kyle Juszczyk. I mean, it's like, you can't miss out on the 30 points McCaffrey can score, right? So do you play it this week and get it? Do you hold off, and then if they don't make the Super Bowl, if they lose this week, you get Juszczyk this week and then a 0 next week? Yeah, I'm leaning toward playing them, but it's a tough call.
My tight ends, I actually went 2 tight ends this week. I have all 4 of them available. And what I'm going to do, I I'm kind of splitting the baby here. It's a little dangerous because you always want to make sure you have something for the Super Bowl. And the way I've got it set up now, I've got Kelsey and Laporta, which if you had Detroit versus Kansas City in the Super Bowl, I no longer have a tight end. Not a good one, at least. I'm throwing out Noah Gray or whatever it may be. So I'm kind of going heavy there. My receivers are thin. For his bet, you would think, Ray, my team would have a lot more available with how weak they have performed. I've just chosen the wrong guys on the wrong weeks. You got any other issues? I'm actually rolling with a lot of San Francisco this week because I just think their matchup against Detroit is one that is more conducive to points than their matchup would be against Kansas City or against Baltimore. So, I still like San Francisco to kind of win this thing overall, but I'm using them up in the NFC Championship and not really saving them for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at the Niners as the team that's going to merge in the game as well. I'm playing Brock Purdy like on every team.
Mm-hmm.
I have 3 playoff teams in the one and done. I'm playing Brock Purdy because, and this is the plus and the minus of the one and done, that gets me both AFC quarterbacks next week.
Yeah, so I got the same thing.
Yeah, so I'm guaranteed of having a quarterback next week, but that means Mahomes or Lamar Jackson's on the bench. And I never play him, which is right. But that's where I'm at, right? And so I think that a lot of these decisions for me they're made for you, right? Because it's like you're looking at this week with an eye toward next week. And so I mean, my current lineup has Ayuk, McCaffrey, and Brock Purdy in it because that's just the way I'm looking at I can save all the AFC guys. I already used Amon-Ra St. Brown. I already used Laporta, so I've had to work it out that I'm playing a lot of Lions that I have left and Niners, even though they may not necessarily be the best options this week.
Yeah, I might be rolling Jawan Jennings. I might have 5 49ers when it's all said and done. And I still have Deebo available, and I just said, hey, if Deebo's out, I'm going Jennings. If Deebo's in, I don't know if I'm going his direction.
It'd be tough.
I just think that's too iffy to count on him for a full 4 quarters. Anyway, that's kind of some one and done thoughts. If you've got questions, playoff leagues one and done, let us know in the chat room. Tomorrow we'll do some DFS on the show. We'll also preview these 2 games. Now, before we leave playoff fantasy football, David in the chat room brings up something, and I had not even heard of this until about, 35, 40 minutes ago. But and Ray, I can't say that I nor you know much more about this than what is publicly known, but David brings up the NFFC and their playoffs, which for a number of years has been a place for people to go. The National Fantasy Football Championship, been going for over 2 decades. People play season long. They do best ball. They obviously play in the playoffs. And what David was referencing is, Ray, it turns out over the weekend, and I think it may have even been the weekend before too, we had 2 instances where in a particular league, in a money league, when I think the winner gets like $200K, something like that, maybe it's $20K, but a league with serious money on the line, it was discovered that after roster lock, somebody went in from the NFFC, and the NFFC admits this is not people wondering about. They have now come out and said, yeah, it happened. We fired the guy. Where one of their employees, Ray, switched the lineups for a competitor, for one of their participants in the tournament. And luckily, somebody caught it. Mm-hmm. Somebody in the league, they had a time-stamped move that said, hey, this occurred after roster lock, and a quick investigation in the NFFC has fired the guy. Now, again, no money was awarded until the end of the playoffs, so there isn't any money that has been lost. But, Ray, what has been lost, and this is maybe more important than the money, is trust. And it's for people in the NFFC, Ray, we've known those guys for decades. Mm-hmm. And I have no doubts about the integrity of a guy like Greg Ambrosius, Tom Kesenick. I do not know, maybe Ray does, I don't know. I don't know who had this issue or who did this and who got fired, and longtime employee that did this. But, Ray, it's the trust factor. Mm-hmm. And that's what's been lost when this news come out. Whether anybody else knew, whether it's happened once or whether it's happened 10 times or 20 times, who knows? But this time the person got caught, and now everybody's kind of wondering, well, hell, what happened in 2015? What happened in 2018? And it throws everybody into kind of a tizzy, wondering what's right and what's wrong here.
Yeah, and you said it too. I don't know if it's been 2 decades I've known Greg and Tom, but it's pretty close. Mm-hmm. And I actually worked for the NFBC for a while when we were all at Fanball. This is back 2010. This is, I think, right before Kyle came on. So I've worked with them. I've had meals with them. I've drank with them till 4 a.m. Like, these are good guys, and so I don't have concerns about them. But this is a tricky situation because this is not you're angry at your cousin and you kick him out of the league next year. This is for, like you're saying, serious money. So it's unfortunate it happened. I know that they'll obviously, from knowing them, put further safeguards in place to avoid this being an issue moving forward. They fired the guy. I know that doesn't change what happened. Money wasn't paid out on this instance, to your point, right? Because it's for the entire playoffs. So they were able to switch things back to the way they should be. But it's just, it's a stain on the industry, and we don't need it. We just don't need it. And, there's already, and Jeff and I in particular have been fighting this battle for a while now, and everyone told us we were crazy. We're not. The industry is going the direction Jeff and I have said it's going to go for 4 years now. Everything is slowing down. People are betting more. They're leaving. They're aging out of the system. That they're not being replaced as much by younger kids. Like, this is a problem. And when one of the stalwart spaces, because you and I get asked this question all the time, I want to play for money. Where do I go? NFFC, NFFC.
That's what I always tell people. Have for years.
Yep. And I would still tell them that today, tomorrow. Like, I still believe in Tom and Greg, but this is something that they're going to have to work through because it's a messy situation, Kyle.
My brother, there was a moment with, and I can't remember, it was DraftKings or FanDuel about half a decade ago, and they were starting to take off, and there was an issue with somebody having access after the fact, somebody that was employed by those providers. And, it was a scandal. And, that's a little more on the SEC side of things. People, that gets the feds involved with gambling. This isn't considered gambling, but who knows where it may lead. But, it was taken care of. The person was let go. Obviously, people still wager and play at DraftKings and FanDuel. Maybe you feel like there's a little more power behind the name because it is a regulated industry. Is this industry regulated? It's really not. I mean, it just isn't in the fantasy universe. These started as, and they're not this way anymore, but they kind of started in the early days of the internet with kind of some mom and pop organizations, and they've grown into bigger and better things and acquisitions and all that. But it is something, Ray, that just brings up the question of, because this is how life is. Outside of someone who commits murder, usually if you're caught doing something, it's probably not the first time you ever did it. Like, it goes back to high school, when you're doing things in high school, it's not like a person cheats on a test and it's the first time they ever cheated on a test. Sure, that can happen. But so often with things of this nature are serious breaches of trust. You're kind of lucky when you catch it. And I don't know if this was luck, but somebody in this league, one of the participants said, "Hey, wait, look at this. Look at this timestamp." And hey, the safeguards in there, it's good they have timestamps. Yeah. One of the reasons you have timestamps is for this situation. So it's good that was put in place and it was caught, but it wasn't caught by the company. It was caught by just a random person who was playing the game and kind of noticed it. So, I mean, they fired the guy. I know that Greg, you sit in their chat boards or whatever in their chat. Greg has a lot of explanations, so I'm sure people can dig it up. But David wanted to bring that up here, and so we didn't want to ignore it. It's not a great thing to talk about, and I hate talking about it with Tom and Greg and guys that I know. But hey, that's what we're paid to do, is to talk about the industry and to talk about what we think and the news that is out there. And that is certainly some big news that is out there today. So we will see what happens, and we'll see if any other fallout occurs. People, I guarantee you, Ray, people are looking at previous years now to see if there was anything fishy. And I'm sure the people at the NFFC are doing that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like you said, they had safeguards in place. Too bad it wasn't a little stronger. But again, like you said before the show, when we were discussing this, someone has to have access to stuff. I mean, someone does. And, the timestamp was there. The safeguards worked. I assume it was a 1 or 2 off, whatever it ends up being here. And it's not something that's occurred in previous years, but the information's available. And, the NFBC itself is scouring it. The users are scouring through it. And I really hope that nothing else is found, right? Especially if it's years ago, because it's then, what was it? Lawsuits going to happen.
Lawsuits, yeah. Everybody, it's contest, and then it's all over.
Yeah. So that I just really hope for everyone that's involved that this is it for this situation.
And if we hear anything or see anything, we'll make sure to kind of keep you up to date, because I know that's something that many people do participate in. Speaking of money, we have been talking wide receivers all week on the show. We've kind of gone through the position, looking ahead, looking backwards, all that stuff. Today we'll look ahead with wide receivers and give you a free agent preview. And Ray, there are a lot of names here. I kind of group them into 4 categories: the high-end guys, The guy's looking for a rebound. The old geezers, who it's probably geezer. I'm from 1988. The long and the tooth veterans, who it might be over for, and then guys who are just guys. On the high end, Ray, and these are notable names: T. Higgins, Mike Evans, Michael Pittman, Calvin Ridley. Now, remember, all these guys can be franchise tagged. You don't see that a lot with wide receivers. That's usually reserved for O-linemen or quarterbacks. We've seen running backs here lately. But Ray, I think with this crew, it sounds like T. Higgins is almost likely to get the franchise tag. Evans, Pittman, and Ridley could all be looking for work elsewhere. We'll see with Pittman. I think he kind of fits so well with Indianapolis, and there seems to be a mutual interest. Someone like Mike Evans, if you're paying Baker Mayfield, do you have money to pay somebody like Mike Evans? That's a big question for the Bucs.
Well, and I think it's a huge question, right? Because obviously he's not the offense, but he's a huge part of it, his ability to stretch the field, his ability to go get the football. And, I'm looking at him right now, according to, Sport Track, he's made $110 million in salary, right? And then there's endorsements. So he's over $100 million. And expecting him not to have bought, 47 Lamborghinis, like that guy doesn't have any money issues. Does he go somewhere and sign a short-term deal? Give me, $25 million for 2 years and I want to win. Does he do something like that? Does he say, I want to reset the market? Does he say, I want $20 million a year? We don't know where he's at mentally. So his situation will be one to follow. He's had success. He's potentially making the Hall of Fame. He's made all this money. Is it win time now? Is he comfortable in Tampa? Does his family and friends, all those things play into the decisions that have to be made here. But I think he could move. And I agree with you on the Pittman case. Why would Pittman leave? I mean, who knows, right? But that seems a situation where he'd be much more likely to stay than Evans, who could fly the coop, as they say.
I was reading up on Ridley's situation, Ray. Remember, he was traded from Atlanta to Jacksonville. And part of that trade was that if Jacksonville re-signed Calvin Ridley, he stayed on beyond 2023, that what had been maybe like a fourth round pick or something would become a second round pick. So Jacksonville would in effect be committing to Calvin Ridley and all the money that entails, but also they'd be giving up a second rounder instead of a lower rounder. Now, I don't know how much of a factor that is in the decision, but and if he signs elsewhere, nobody cares about the picks, it's who cares. But of those guys, Ray, let's say, and this may be silly to say, but let's say they would all cost you. You'd get any one of them for $15 million. Who would you want? Higgins, Evans, Pittman, or Ridley?
I'm going to use the if, which is impossible. If Higgins was healthy, given his skills and his age, I'd probably go Higgins. But I don't know.
Evans.
Yeah, you'd go Evans?
Maybe I should have couched this just for next year, because I kind of assume you can cut guys, you can dump guys,
Right.
I'd still be Evans next year. He'd be the guy I'd one of this crew.
Because there's a 5-year difference, which is significant, right? But if you're talking 2024, I would go with Mike Evans as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's just been no fade. Guys, just
really hasn't.
Wrong. It's impressive. Now the rebound guys, and it's kind of funny. Maybe I'm giving more credit than these guys deserve, but Ray, how perfect is it that both Gabe Davis and Mike Williams are free agents this year? It's like two of the most frustrating dudes to ever own. Noah Brown is a free agent this year. He had a couple of huge efforts that got people excited about him. And Marquise Brown is a free agent. And Ray, he's just kind of faded, hasn't he? Not that he's been bad, but for a variety of reasons, I think he's just been a dude lately. It's like, no, he's not terrible. He's better than DJ Chark or whatever, but it's like Marquise Brown has never reached that potential that so many expected him to reach.
Yeah, and I mean, not to be, but he's 5'1", 104 pounds. He's tiny. And, Greg Dortch on his own team, when given an opportunity, actually outproduces what Marquise Brown does most weeks, right? So I think Brown is an excellent complementary receiver. If he's your wide receiver 1, you're done. If he's your 2 or your 3, I think you're in a really good spot. He can sign somewhere and really help somebody, provided he can stay healthy. But he's not built for it. He's not that kind of football player on the field either. He's just not that guy where he should be forced to lead the wide receiving core. And unfortunately, for a good deal of the time with the Cardinals, he's been asked to do that.
I could see the Raiders like trading Devontae Adams and their move is Marquise Brown to team up with Jacoby Myers, something like that. And it's like, who cares? Mike Williams, Gabe Davis, Noah Brown, again, rebound guys. Would you take a shot on Mike Williams, Ray? I wouldn't be a team interested in taking that shot. Every single year, the dude is banged up.
I mean, hey, 1 year, $3 million, let's go. Sure. I mean, I'll take it. It has to be a short-term deal and it has to be cheap. And we say, hey, Mike, you kill it this year. You give us a 10 touchdowns, catch 75 passes. Next year, you're getting 4 years and you're getting $80 million. So it's your call. I might have exaggerated a little bit, but you can't give this guy any money. You can't. He is a tremendous football player, but he just cannot stay on the field.
Old guys, Mike Thomas, OBJ. Good luck to those guys. I wouldn't have signed either of them this year, but hey, both guys got contracts. I guess they'll land somewhere. Guys who are just guys: Curtis Samuel, DJ Chark, Josh Reynolds, Tyler Boyd. That's another reason Higgins, Ray, would maybe get that tag, is Tyler Boyd probably moving on. I don't think Cincinnati has no room to keep a guy like Tyler Boyd.
No, and Tyler Boyd, complimentary receiver in the right offense, and even in this offense, right? He can catch 56, 62 pass. He can move chains and that kind of thing. But he's not someone that anyone should be spending big money on, especially now that he's 29 years old.
And we should note, if Higgins gets that big money deal, that may mean the end of Joe Mixon. There's got to be that decision too. All of a sudden, you start building up this cap. You got to take care of Jamar Chase. Yeah, so Cincinnati kind of in a difficult spot as they go into the offseason. Anyway, there are names available at wide receiver. We'll see where all those guys land tomorrow on the show. We'll take a look at the draft class for this upcoming spring. It's a pretty good one at the wide receiver spot. Until then, let's switch gears, Ray, and go to the world of baseball. Spend a good portion of the remainder of our show talking nothing but MLB. First things first, Joey Votto. Remember him, Ray? It sounds like it's over for Joey Votto. Yesterday, I think it was, the Reds president said, we have no intention of bringing back Joey Votto. He's 40. I get it. It sounds like he wants to play, but honestly, this is absolutely a guy who, if anybody has followed anything on the internet since like COVID, Twitter, Instagram, just general report. I mean, Joey Votto is kind of a hoot, Ray, and it's really just time to go do something more fun. That's one of those guys, Ray, I got no problem going into the booth, right off the field and into the booth. Joey Votto is kind of that guy, has had a great career. We're in Hall of Fame week. I wonder if his career has risen to that level.
Yeah, there's a most recent picture I saw of him was from a couple days ago where he's out in the storm and his beard's all iced over and he's like, and he's got a beanie on. He's got this frozen beard. If I'm a team, I'm signing this guy. I'm giving him, $3 million for a year, and let's see if he wants to do it, right? Because I think clubhouse presence and all that kind of stuff. Is he a difference maker? Absolutely not. He's not that guy. And he hasn't been that guy for a couple years now. But he's to your point with the Hall of Fame question. Oh, that sounds stupid. Does it? I mean, if you look at his career slash line, it's dipped recently because his batting average has gone in such the toilet of late. But 294 average, 409 on base percentage, 511 slugging percentage. I mean, he almost has the holy trinity of 300, 400, 500. Right?
Yeah, I mean, Ray, at OPS over 900. That's for as long as he's done it.
Yeah,
I don't know how you can put Adrian Beltre in at 97% certainty. And you can't tell me Joey Votto is at 75% certainty?
Well, I think a guy that just went in, I would pivot from Adrian Beltre. I would go Joe Mauer. Like Joe Mauer made it, and Joe Mauer and Votto in certain respects are similar in the sense that they were great players. They were all-stars. Both of them had a little less power than was ideal. I know Votto had some seasons, but that was a big check against him for a while. He doesn't have enough power. Both guys were accused of being too patient at times, right? And you look at the slash line of Mauer, and it's different. He's a catcher. It's OPS 827. It's a big difference. Joey Votto. I mean, we said it the other day, jokingly around. If Harold Baines is in the Hall of Fame, Joe Votto goes in on the first ballot. Now I know that's not how it works, but Joey Votto, damn good baseball player, and I love the fact that he did change from basically being a doubles kind of hitter to a guy later in his career that found a way to hit for power.
He embraced the old man's skills.
Yeah.
And I think, and obviously that ballpark helped him throughout his career. And I was just thinking, you mentioned, hey, if you could bring in a guy and just roll him out there. And his season was not that great. I mean, he is 40 years old, but I kind of think to myself, Ray, like, and unfortunately Michael Busch is a left-handed hitter, so there's not a platoon here, but like in Chicago, maybe you make him the left-handed DH complement to Christopher Morel. when and we'll see it. And I don't think there's anything great here, but if the guy wants to play, you think somebody would be willing to give him a $2 million shot in spring training.
Come to San Francisco, man. We'll take it. We got rid of Mitch Haniger. We can just put you. I mean, they're playing Lamont Wade at first base, who's fine. They play Flores there, who's fine. Like I don't know if he loves San Francisco or not, but I'm sure the Giants. I would hope the Giants. I should say. I'm not sure. I would hope they would love to have him around.
Mm-hmm. Joey Votto, not in your rank. Are you ranking him still, Ray, at first base?
Yeah, I think he's in there. Let me verify that. I want to say, yeah, but it's like, what I have him at 48 or something at first base. Yeah, it's like, he's in there.
If you're going 800 picks deep, you might be thinking Joey Votto in your draft. Overall rankings. Every day, most days, we like to spotlight something that Ray has written up over at Fantasy Guru that is located within the draft guide, which is available right now. You can check it out. And Ray, this is a long-term discussion that you have always, every preseason, wanted to talk about. Your distrust, your dislike, perhaps hatred, of overall rankings. Something, Ray, that have been a pillar of fantasy draft guides forever. Let's see. Here's one, Ray. Last year, look at all those rankings, right? That's 300 guys overall rankings. So here's some too. Look at all these overall. I mean, pages and pages and pages. But you hate them. Tell us why.
Yeah, and there's an article at the site in the draft guide at fantasyguru.com. Again, use that promo code FSD20 for the 20% discount when you sign up. You can see it there on screen too. My biggest issue with the overall rankings list is that there is no context to it whatsoever. How do you arrive at an overall rankings list? Generally speaking, you put all your projections in. You say, what are the numbers that are generated in the fantasy space in terms of dollars? Here's my overall list. Like what does that tell you, right? Now, you can, like in our draft guide at fantasyguru.com, we have auction values, right, for the players, whether you're in mixed, AL, or NL situations. You could conceivably download the files and just put everyone in auction dollar value order and get a rough estimate of this, right? Mm-hmm. You could do it that way. We also will have the draft book out in a couple weeks, maybe a month. I forget when I started. The draft book basically takes the ADP and the auction values and puts them together. I don't like it. I hate it. I'm just describing why that is now. There's no context with the overall list. So, your first 4 picks are all hitters. In your time for your 5th pick, it's probably time to think grabbing a pitcher. If the overall rankings list says grab another hitter, do you grab a hitter? And if you don't grab a hitter, you're not following the overall rankings list anyway. So what value is it of yours? If you have, you've taken pitching and you've got reliever, you haven't taken a starter. If you're looking at the overall rankings list and it says take a reliever, but you really need a starting pitcher, are you going to take another reliever? No, you're going to take a starting pitcher, which again means you're not even using the overall ranking list anyway. So I think that's the biggest issue, Kyle, is that we can all in theory say that Trey Turner is more valuable than Hunter Brown or whatever it might be. But until we know what your league setup is, what the size of your rosters are, what the size of your starting lineup is, until we know all those particulars and how the draft is progressing, to me, there's not enough context.
And Ray, that applies like to all fantasy sports.
Absolutely.
But I think especially baseball, because baseball, to your final point there, what are the requirements? And it's all over the board in baseball. 3 outfielders, 4 outfielders, 5 outfielders, utility guys, how many starting pitchers, SPRPs, 2 catchers, 1 catch. Like it's totally all over the board. So looking at these overall rankings, I don't even know what sort of league they apply to. Like what's the normal league? Because that does dictate when you take pitching. If I'm in, and let's just exaggerate this, if I'm in an 8-team league, which people are, I mean, people still play in 8-team leagues. I'm not taking a starting pitcher before the 8th round, maybe, and maybe everybody else in my draft is thinking that way too. So all these guys that are on the overall list in the top 50 as starting pitchers, why draft them if I'm in an 8-team league?
Right.
I would guess in general they're for 12-team leagues, but it's very rarely ever mentioned that way. If I'm in a points league versus a roto league, like all of this just tumbles in. And the other difficulty, Ray, is, we're all human beings and not everybody's using the same overall list, nor do they have the same strategies. So everybody's making picks and you're like, what, really? Like that, even if you got the most informed dudes, Ray, we hang out, in the FSGA or Tout Wars or any of this stuff. There are always surprises.
Sure.
There are people, you're in an auction league and every single book you've ever looked at the year of says, no, Shohei Ohtani is worth $42.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes for $58. It's like those things happen in every draft room and every auction room out there. And it just blows up the whole thing. So important in baseball, Ray, and in these drafts is you have to be able to think on your feet and adjust based off what that room is telling you and based off of where guys are going. And an overall rankings list does not allow that. It locks you in and would leave you lost. I'm almost tempted, Ray, to one time just sit down with an overall ranking list and see what my team ends up looking like if I truly just drafted the next best dude available.
If you're going to draft with an overall rankings list, I'm being serious, right? It's the same thing as auto drafting and letting the computer pick your team.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's the same thing. And would anyone want to auto draft? No. Has there been a scenario where someone's done it and won? Yeah. Does anyone, if I said to you, you're going to auto draft your team, would you want to manage that team all season long? And you'd say no. What's the difference here? Because it's the same exact idea. And what happens on those auto draft teams, right? They end up with 3 catchers. And it's like, you're only using 1 catcher. Why? Because the catcher was the highest one. That's dumb. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the twofold piece here that really is important because in baseball, there's the most positions to cover: catcher, first base, second base, third base, shortstop, outfield, pitcher, starting pitcher, relief pitcher. So we have the most positions to cover of the fantasy sports. And then in a 5x5, we have 10 categories to cover.
Mm-hmm.
So it's exponentially more important to have players ranked properly and understand the flow of a draft and understand what your team needs positionally, categorically speaking. An overall rankings list doesn't take any of that into account. It just says, this is the guy that we expect to earn the most value. He's going to earn more than this guy. Who's more than this guy. Has no context whatsoever. Is it all power that's generating it? Is it all speed? Is it all saves? Is it all strikeouts? Are you using middle infielders? Is it the 5 outfielders that you talked about? Is it 9 pitchers? Like all of these things, I'm thinking back, and you have that book there, Kyle. Maybe you can check. Dude, have you ever seen an overall rankings list that says for a 5x5 league with 12 teams with 14 hitters and 9 pitchers? I have never seen that.
This one here says it'll say 5x5 values. So it does say 5x5 values. It does not say league size or anything. There's one that says dynasty, if you were drafting that way, but nothing, if you're in a 15-man league or an 8-man league, it's totally different, but there's nothing of league size located.
And I've seen these. I've been involved in these. We've talked about, done magazines through the years. I don't remember there ever being a key that says that. I don't remember being a key saying, here's our top 300 for 3 outfielder leagues. Here's our top 300 for 5 outfielder leagues. Here's our top 300 for 7 starting pitching spots. Here's for 9. No, they just throw it out there. Yeah. And honestly, it's lazy analysis because a computer just spits it out and people throw it out there. So whatever, I'm just telling you, whatever you think about the last 10 minutes of a discussion here, don't draft off a top overall list. Okay. That's the wrong way to do it for the variety of reasons that we've mentioned, and probably some we haven't even mentioned yet, Kyle.
One of the biggies would be what sort of league are you in when it comes to catchers, 1 or 2. And that leads us to discussing the catcher position on this Thursday. The entire week long, we have broken down this spot and talked it over. We always like to lead with a did you know at catcher. So let me start with this one. Deals with Will Smith of the LA Dodgers. 39 of his past 263 starts, which is about 15% of his total starts, have been as a DH. Why is that important? It's important, Ray, because there is no DH for Will Smith this year. DH is Shohei Ohtani. And if it's not Shohei Ohtani with the Dodgers, it's probably one of their other big wigs who needs a day. So I bring that up, Ray. Will Smith, great player, good catcher, but about 15% of his starts over the last 2 years have been as a DH. You can't count on all those. That's an average of 20 per season. I don't know if maybe it's down to 5 this year. And that may not sound like much, but it's a did you know? It's something where I'm not saying don't draft Will Smith, but it's an understanding of this position, Ray, where a little bit of his games played is baked in to being able to DH, which this year with Ohtani on board, no way, no how that he's getting that many DH starts.
Yeah, and it's a great position to point out because one of the big keys, we talked about this with Ramuto yesterday on the show, and if you missed it, you can always find all the shows on at Fantasy Guru Slip 40 and Slip at fantasyguru.com in the Elite Plus section. You can also find them on YouTube at youtube.com/@Elite Plus Network. You can find the show is actually in a podcast form. I know those of you listening know that, but maybe not everyone does. You can get it on Pandora. You can find it on iTunes, all that kind of stuff too, Google, all that kind of thing. We talked about Romuto and the fact that, how his plate appearances are what sets his floor so high, because he's always in the lineup. When you talk about taking away 10 or 15 games potentially from a player like Will Smith, it's not huge because the catcher position is not overly deep in terms of top end guys. So it doesn't ding him to the point where now he's catcher 9. But if you're sitting there and it's Romuto or Will Smith and you want to go Romuto because of playing time, it's fair to consider that because he will lose time at DH.
Well, you're already fairly assured, Ray. They're going to miss 30 games, just rest.
Probably.
And if you take away another 15 now, I mean, they're in effect 50% more rest days than you might expect. So, and again, I'm just pointing it out with Will Smith. These are things that, like a guy like Sal Perez, he can go out and DH every single day. The Royals will use him that way. And there are some catchers that instead of a true day off, they DH. Adley Rauschman, how's he get to 145, 150 games? He DHs a bit. And not that Will Smith won't at all, but again, they're paying a guy $2 million this year to be their DH 155 times. So maybe if it's based off salary, maybe Will Smith will get more DH at bats than Shohei Ohtani. Who knows? But Ray, it leads to our 2 catcher leagues and the strategy that it entails. But I'm glad you put together a little chart, kind of makes things a little simple. I will say this, single catcher leagues, Ray, like if you're in a 1 catcher league, just real quickly, are we like just ignoring the spot till late? I mean, like Rauschman, he was top 50 in a 2 catcher league. What is he in a single catcher league? Like a guy like that, the best of the best, how far would he fall for you?
Well, it's really difficult. I mean, again, we ran that poll that we talked about earlier where 76% of people are in 1 catcher leagues. The ranking, and by the way, the rankings at fantasyguru.com, and it says this at the top, are predicated on 2 catcher leagues. I think it's really tough to me. And I think you're in the same position, Kyle, that both of us have never really been about, I'm taking the first, second, third catcher off the board kind of thing. Like that's just not the way we want to build a team, whether it's a 1 catcher or 2 catcher league. I think over the years, we've done a lot of labor drafts together. And there's always someone in those AL and NL only leagues that doubles up on catchers. They get 2 of the top, and that's in the only league. I think you can have a little bit more power there than you would in a mixed league by doing that. But, there's a significant difference if it's a 1 or 2 catcher league in the value of a player. But in both scenarios, am I going to be the guy that grabs Rauschman or grabs Romuto? I'm probably just not.
Yeah, I think in a 1 catcher league, like Rauschman falls to 75 or 80. I mean, I just wouldn't be in. And the position, we'll talk about this a little deeper than it has been in the past. So you can get better catcher ones as the 9th and 10th dude off the board. Take us through this page you put together, Ray, for the 2 catcher setup. Kind of run us through the bullet points you've got there.
Yeah, and I think that this is very simplified, but here it is. The idea, if you're in a 2 catcher league, what kind of player do you want to target at the position? Because they're basically 2 buckets, and it's not ideal, but it's generic. There's the power hitting catchers, and there's the guys that give you a bit of batting average, right? There's very few guys that do it all, which is why guys like Rauschman or Contreras are so attractive because they have the ability to do both. It's kind of one or the other. And a lot of the decision that you make, especially as you get later in the draft, where you're saying to yourself, do I go Tyler Stevenson, who we talked about earlier in the week? Do I go for him and try to get batting average, or do I get Danny Jansen and go for power? The decision you make there is based upon how your team is constructed, which again goes back to the first topic we just had. So kind of making that decision, understanding that some of the catchers you take late can actually hurt your team. Batting 219 with 12 home runs is actually going to hurt your team. So factor that in. You mentioned this yourself in the Will Smith comment, the role of playing time. How many of these catchers are looking at catching 120 games? How many of them are looking at seeing 15, 20 games out of the DH spot? Figure that out. That's very important because a lot of these catchers, Ryan Jeffers last year was terrific, but he just kept sharing time with Christian Javier. He didn't separate himself playing time wise. The batting order position, a guy like Will Smith's in a power spot in a great lineup, then you might see Ryan Jeffers hitting 8 for the Twins. And not only does that affect their ability in the run scored and RBI columns, but it also impacts their overall usefulness in your fantasy game because, as we talk about all the time, when you drop a spot down in the batting order, you lose 15 to 20 plate appearances over the course of the season. So your opportunities are just less down the order as well. The league size, as we're talking about here, determines 10-team league, 15-team league, all that goes in. And then it's a question about when you kind of make the decision to jump in at that spot, Kyle.
If I was going to say the low floor I'm looking for with two catchers would be 200 games at least. And I'd aim for 220 between my two catchers. Does that sound about right to you? Or would you give it a, because that's what, to me, it really comes down to, Ray, is very few of these guys have superstar abilities.
Right.
So it's almost like who's going to give me games instead of who's going to give me stats. So I kind of put the low bar at like 200 and maybe the sweet spot around 220. Does that sound kind of right?
If you pull it up last year, there were 26 catchers that played 100 games. So if you're in a 12-team league with two,
get 200.
Saying you want 200, okay. But again, remember, there are also guys I'm looking at right now, like as an example, Sean Murphy played 108 games, but he had 438 plate appearances. Christian Bethancourt played 104 games, had 332 plate appearances. So he played 4 less games and had 100 fewer plate appearances.
Huh.
So, again, that comes with, did I come in relief, later in the game for defense? Where am I hitting in the batting order? All that kind of stuff. But I would caution people, because I used to do this personally. I used to say, all right, like you're saying, give me 200 games, give me this, and I'll take these guys, and I'll just wait late, and I'll take Jake Rogers, and I'll grab Nick Fortis, and I'll be fine. And then at the end, it's like you end up with 23 home runs with your two catchers, but they're hitting 219.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at the batting average category, and it's like, well, dang it, if my team hit 2 points higher this year, I would have gained 3 points in the batting average category. So I think there's a fine line with saying I just want playing time versus I need to pay really close attention to the players themselves, because some of these catchers play a lot, and it oftentimes has to do with their defense and not necessarily their bat.
On that power average thing, right? I think it's kind of easy, and maybe people have a different specific number, but hey, if I get 18 or more home runs from my catcher, that's a win on the power side. What is it on average? Is it getting a guy who hits 235 or better? I mean, what's a win for the batting average at catcher?
Yeah, let's do a quick search here. So if we set the limit, let's say 250 plate appearances, which could be someone used as a second catcher. If you 250 plate appearances last year, there were 11 guys that hit 260. So, and then if you drop it down to 250, it's 16 guys. And then, so really last year, most guys had 300 plate appearances, only 16 catchers bettered the league average.
So that's what I'd say. Maybe it's 250.
Yeah, it's 250. And again, some of those names are like Alejandro Kirk, we talked about yesterday. But that's probably a good target zone. Now, that's not, again, it depends what your team needs and what you're targeting. Cal Raleigh hit 232. Okay, but he hit 30 home runs, right? Francisco Alvarez hit 209, but he hit 25 home runs. So that's the balancing act that you need to kind of read this off of how the rest of your team is being built.
So many people have dumped two catcher leagues because of the talent pool. And it's not way better, but Ray, you look at this list, there's a lot more depth than I recall from 5 years ago. And a lot of it's because of a youth. I mean, the influx of youth here is pretty astounding. When you look at Rauschman, William Contreras, Yanir Diaz, then you get to Gabriel Moreno, Logan O'Hoppe, Keibert Ruiz, Francisco Alvarez, Bo Naylor. Who else would maybe be on here? Henry Davis, I guess you could throw him out there.
He doesn't qualify catcher yet, I don't think.
Oh, he doesn't? Okay.
Because he played too much outfield last year.
Yeah, we may see Harry Ford coming up this year with Seattle. Mm-hmm. Like, these are guys arriving that actually know how to handle a bat. I mean, of that top 15, 6 of those guys are really young dudes in like year 1 through 2 almost. And not all of them are going to be successful, but this is an influx of catchers who actually know what to do in the batter's box.
Yeah, and it is slightly rare. If you're a hitter first catcher, you obviously got a chance to get there quickly to the big leagues because there are not many difference-making hitters at the catcher position. At the same time, that's why the oldsters always have a job. Why is Yan Gomes playing every day? Because he's an old guy that knows how to handle a pitching staff, right? Like and his offense is fine, but he's been around forever because he knows how to handle the pitching staff. So a lot of times teams will say, go out and hit 210 with your 298 on base percentage, but if you handle that pitching staff, whether it's the staff in general, whether it's these two guys you got to catch, whatever it might be, you can have a long career. And so it is really cool to see the catcher position kind of get some young players that have the offensive upside, because for the last handful of years, we really haven't seen that.
Would you ever draft a third catcher? in a 2-catcher league. I would not.
Yeah. Comes up a lot. I think there are instances where I would, but that is completely dependent upon how my lineups are set each day and how deep my bench is and all that. As a general answer to the question, I would say 95% of the time I would not draft a third catcher. It's a waste. You said it earlier. How many third catchers are you going to draft that are going to be breakout stars? None. Like Patrick Bailey was a third catcher you drafted. He was fine last year. Did he break out? No.
Yeah, man, you know what's going to happen, right? People will be taking Ethan Salas, that 18-year-old. What is he, like 18? And
he might only be 17 still. Is he 18?
Yeah, the guy's just out of his diapers, and he's already in like AAA. That's going to be the third maybe even a second catcher that people will take.
God, he's 17. He doesn't turn 18 until June. But yeah, no, because you're better off, and we've talked about this for years, you and I, you're better off later in the draft taking a chance on a rookie, taking a chance on a person that could break out, taking a chance on a middle reliever that could have huge value. That third catcher you take, you're never going to utilize. And number two, the chance of them making some breakout Yiner Diaz type of effort is just really small.
We will talk more catchers tomorrow to wrap up the week. Guys like Ethan Salas. We'll talk prospects, the youth. Some of these guys who are emerging, like the O'Hoppies out there, such as Salas, such as maybe eventually Henry Davis. Gabe Moreno looked good in October. Also looked good late in the summer. So we'll talk about some of those young guys coming up tomorrow and maybe some final thoughts on rankings with the catchers. That will take us to the end of today's proceedings. A fun one. A lot of good stuff. Tomorrow we'll get you set for the NFC and AFC championships. Talk some DFS there. More catchers, more wide receivers, maybe more news and notes. Ray will profile another column. Is there anything else you hate more than overall rankings, Ray, in fantasy baseball guides, or is that it?
And that's probably at the top of the list I really dislike. But I'm sure if I had some time to noodle on it, I could come up with a bunch of other stuff too, Kyle.
Dodgers.
Yeah, anything.
Dodgers, he hates. Ray, take it easy, man. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Sounds good, Cal.
Great to have everybody in the chat room. Appreciate you on X, YouTube, Facebook, podcast, wherever you're finding us. Back tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. Kyle Elfrink, Ray Flowers. It is Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com.